Tell me what your life was like before you died.
At 15, I started having visions and dreams quite consistently about this event that happened in my life when I was 6 months. But the first couple of times that I had it, it was just kind of like one of these lucid arrangements or dreams where I'm kind of trying to figure out, why am I having this dream over and over again? Why am I in this hospital? Why am I seeing my mom? Why am I seeing some family members and they're all young? And why am I seeing this little baby in a kind of like this incubator in a small little hospital in South America? And I couldn't really quite figure out what this was all about, but it didn't take too long, probably maybe about a half a year or so of these visions and dreams coming in and out. I saw this whole scene playing out in the hospital. But the crazy thing, if that wasn't crazy enough, but the thing that really got me was that I could feel the vibrations, the feelings, the emotions were very vibratory. There was a like frequency, and that was the kind of the thing that I couldn't really make sense, because back then nobody was telling me anything about anything. I didn't know I had died. But what I could really pick up on was the fact that my mother, who I was really close with, I could really pick her up. I mean, I could really feel her emotions. I could feel her thoughts. And I say feel because it wasn't like I heard it, I could sense it. That experience of seeing that, and there's more to it. It was a series of events from the hauntings through to when I finally started. I mean, by the time I was gone from that place, I knew that life wasn't really kind of what people were telling me it was. But it wasn't until I had the visions and dreams that I really started to realize that something was completely different here. And I wasn't feeling like this was home to me. I was feeling like somewhere else was home to me. And I wanted to have those visions as much as I could, because the visions weren't just about the hospital scene. They were also about what happened when I crossed over. And that's the part that when those visions and those dreams came into play, and the intensity of those, it's like what everybody talks about. I literally was in them, immersed in them in all sorts of ways that I couldn't do it anymore. I had to eventually confront my mom with it and say, did any of this by any chance actually happen? And when I explained to her what I saw, especially the hospital stuff, she kind of flipped. I remember that we were in the kitchen and her mouth dropped open and she said, everything you just told me, every conversation that I had in that moment when they told me you were going to die, everything is exactly the way it transpired. Everything, even things that other people wouldn't have known, what happened when she got the news and so on, where she went and so forth. And so she encouraged me to share it with somebody. But man, look, I don't want to date myself, but this was before the internet. There was nobody to talk to. So I kept it to myself. So after that, as I'm sure many people have told you, when you keep that kind of truth bottled up, it eats you up. It eats you up. So long-winded answer to your question, but it's been, an odyssey at the very least. I in the book that I wrote about all of this, I call it the outer journey and the inner quest, because there are two separate events that go on and all that. And I was definitely living a lot of the outer journey, which is what most people do. So that it's never been normal, if you want it, whatever normal is these days. It's never been. Like I said, when I was 6 months old, I was starting to develop sort of this upper respiratory condition. And at the time, my mom didn't think much about it. She just assumed that that I was just experiencing a cold. And so we had a little clinic hospital in the city in the neighborhood that she lived in. And she took me there, and when I came in, it was the condition that she was telling me about was really kind of progressing, but they just figured that everything would be fine. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation, but nothing that was sounding any kind of alarm. Within about 2 to 3 hours, everything's just started to turn. It was as if, this mild condition had just erupted, and I was really having a hard time breathing. And it was apparent to the doctors that I had something more than just a cold. So they told my mother at the time that they were going to watch me, but they kind of had this feeling that things could get maybe a little bit worse before it got better. About 4 hours into this, this thing was just rapidly going. 4 hours into this, one doctor pulled my mother out of the room and told her, and this is kind of where I zipped into my dream, basically told her that it didn't look like I was going to make it through the night, that they wanted to know if there was anything they could do, like maybe bring in the priest and pray for me and do my last rites for me. And I remember feeling like the room had shifted in energy, and I could feel that she had disconnected with the conversation, and I could feel as though I was kind of inside of her, but not really. I always felt like I was just on the outside of her. And I remember that she went back in the room, said a little prayer, and to the chagrin of everybody, to the surprise for sure of everybody, she got back up and walked out of the hospital. And about a block or so away from the hospital, there was this church. And when she saw the church, and I remember this vividly because this is kind of what I was describing her, I remember that she literally got on her knees and she crawled all the way to the entrance of the church. There was like a little boulevard. And when she got to the front altar, she was in deep prayer, almost meditative type of a prayer. But here again, the energy kind of shifted in the church. It was as though it wasn't this heaviness of grief that you would expect. She was in this state of gratitude, appreciation of just having had 6 months with me. That was what her prayer was. It was, thank you so much for the time I had with my child, kind of a thing. And I remember the prayer very specifically. And at a certain point, it wasn't very long into her prayer that things again kind of shifted, and the air got lighter and the energy got lighter. And she was able to, unbeknownst to her, she was able to see visions of my life, of what I would be like in the future if I could live. She always told me that she didn't really remember shifting. She just remembers that these visions started occurring. And basically it was me being a good father, a good husband, a good son, a good person. And she remembers having this complete sense of calmness come through, and again, gratitude and appreciation that she was able to see this, even though she knew she would never actually experience it with me, because for what she knew, by the time she came back, I was going to be dead. But she was so appreciative. And so at that moment, when this calmness kind of swept through, she got back up. She kind of had this sense that everything was going to be all right. She didn't know if that meant all right because she could handle the news when she got back, or she could, or whether it was something else. She just didn't know, but she didn't really care. She went back to the hospital and she got greeted by the doctors and family member. And she said she was really surprised because they were crying, but they were tears of joy. And all of this, seeing all of this in my dream. And they said, back then, and even today, they said, we don't know exactly what happened, but in the time that you were gone, your baby went from being pretty much dead. All his organs were shutting down, his vitals were going. We really thought he was going to die. And now everything has changed. The vitals went up, organs came back, everything. Even his condition was different. And all they could tell her, it had to be a miracle. And that was enough. My mother was a very, very, very stout Catholic woman. I mean, look what she just did. That was all she needed to hear. And that's all the doctors could give her. So in a lot of those visions, the next thing I remember was being in this sort of desert. I don't know where exactly, but it was very bright. It was, even though it was a desert, it didn't feel like a desert per se. There was vibrancy in it. And I remember looking down and I see this old man. He was a pretty fragile old man, like almost like a beggar, looking and extending his hand out, and he was looking at me, and I thought he was looking at me. It turns out he was looking behind me. And when I looked behind me, there was this beautiful orb, and it was like 5 to 10 times bigger easily than what we would consider the sun to be. But I remember at that moment that it didn't hurt my eyes. And I kept thinking to myself, why isn't it hurting my eyes? Because this thing is really brilliant. And when I went to look back down, the beggar man was now this boy, a fragile little boy. And same thing. He was looking through me, and I looked back, and there was this orb, but it was now coming closer to me. And as it got closer to me, I could start feeling, sensory-wise, I started feeling this connection with it. And what I specifically remember was that my cells, okay, you have 50 trillion cells in your body, something like that. I could feel each one of those cells. They were vibrating like uncontrollably, like as if they were like hungry for this energy, for this light. And as the light got closer to me, the cells literally just erupted. Like I felt, the way I described it was, and this is kind of the thing that I always to this day remember is that I didn't feel it like me feeling all this vibration. It was me feeling 50 trillion selves of me expressing itself in bliss. For like 2, 3, 4 seconds, I felt me as 50 trillion me's, and it was amazing. It's hard to put it into words because I don't know what that would be like to actually experience yourself 50 trillion times in one particular moment. And back then, I mean, forget it. I didn't have any way of even knowing what just happened. When we pass, there is no such thing as time and space. We're just simply consciousness. And so I was experiencing something in our linear time that was 15, 16 years later. But in the metaphysical aspect of it, there is no such thing as that. There's only the now. So that experience that happened 15 or 16 years ago, at that point, was happening to me right at that moment. There was no difference. So the other thing that people oftentimes have a hard time grappling with is that we don't experience just this life. Okay, we have experienced lives like this a lot of times. So when one asks, like, did you experience it as a baby or as an adult? I experienced it the way I experienced it 1,000 times before, because that's to me, to us, that's real. This is not. And so it's kind of like going back to a favorite place that you've always been to, whether or not you did it now or whether you did it 20 years ago or even in a different life with a different personality or what have you. I'm hoping that I can kind of explain that, because to me it was like going back home, and it didn't matter that I had died and saw it from a 6-month perspective. Now there is a little twist to this that comes in a little later, which is that some of this was also attributed to the fact that I had what's called a walk-in experience. So I switched souls, if you will, in the process of experiencing the near death. And that was something that didn't come to me until much later in life, where I actually thought that I had always felt like I was slightly disconnected from this avatar body. Like the coding was there, like everything seemed to match up properly, but I just didn't feel like I was originally in this body. When a walk-in comes in, they have a specific role, and not all walk-ins come from the same place. So like in my particular case, my experiences have always been direct with source, God, whatever you want to call it, as part of a group of spiritual beings that are here and go elsewhere to help plant the seeds, if you will, and then watch the seeds bloom in what would be called schools. This Earth School and many others throughout the universe and multiverse and multi-dimensions, really. So I started to see visions of the various lives that I have lived, not just here, but in other places that I would call more like my home, or places that I've existed in more often than here. There are teams that do what they call themselves architects. There are teams that come here and design and basically put together the structure for a school like this. And we visit this world from the beginning of this Earth School and previous Earth Schools, but we're here with what one would consider linear time at the beginning of all this, and we come through various cycles of humanity to make sure that humanity is still on the course that it's supposed to be, and then we come at the end, which is why we're here. So when I particularly came here, was the opportunity presented itself through this divine act of unconditional love that my mother had to open up a portal, if you will, for me to enter into this vessel. And so my experiences are somewhat different than others because I have a really clear picture of what I was supposed to do here. The biggest parting message is this, and it kind of gets back to what I just said, which is to say, everything that you have done it for a purpose. If you feel that you've been disconnected, and that disconnection has led to so many trials and tribulations, depression, suicidal thoughts, disconnections, or whatever label people put, understand that those were never maladies, even though you were told they were. Understand that they were simply there to help remind you that you are so much more than what anybody has ever told you. And certainly nothing like a label could ever be tagged on you. If your experience has been that in your life, then you have come to the right place in your life. You're here now. You're ready to wake up in whatever way you want to do, and see it as a blessing, because there are so many people right now that are walking this life and haven't even begun to experience what you have experienced. You are genuine and you are perfection. You are perfection if you have done this already, done the journey, even some parts of the inner quest. You are perfection, and you are ready to wake up and shine so that the world could see that you are the light of the world. That wasn't just a designation for one person. That one person said we would all one day be the light of the world, and it's time for you to shine.